This is the most exciting sport in the world, Jack. All fight sports are among the most exciting sports in the world. Mixed martial arts is a new sport. It's still in its relative embryonic stage compared to other sports that are out there. Why shouldn't we be attaching a very passionate, a very new, a very exciting, a very gripping and riveting style of commentary to it to suit the style of sport? There's nothing worse than watching a mixed martial arts fight and then having commentators who are boring, or commentators who don't know what they're talking about, or commentators who show no genuine enthusiasm for it. They're showing feigned enthusiasm. And I don't know about you, but I can pretty easily pick up between feigned enthusiasm and real enthusiasm when it comes to commentary.
And so can our listeners who actually have running lists of things commentators say that, you know, sometimes prove a little silly. I can't tell you how many times people, you know, remind me that Mike Goldberg one time said Travis Lutter is the Michael Jordan of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of examples of that, and it all comes down to as well, I mean, it's a matter of personal opinion too, Jack. There's going to be certain commentators I do like, certain commentators I don't like. It's my personal opinion. Just like every reader on Sherdog has their opinion as to who's the best and who's the worst MMA commentator, and I'm sure that I feature on both ends of the spectrum, no doubt about it. And you know, that's part of the beauty about being a fan of the sport, is that you can have your opinion and you can debate so many great topics, which I think is what makes mixed martial arts so unique, is that it's still very much an internet-driven, fan-driven sport, and I hope it stays that way for a long time to come. I think it's one of the real beauties about mixed martial arts.
It seemed like your style, as pleasing as it was, it kind of reached a point when it came to being discussed online of a, you know, where should the limit be on the enthusiasm and where should the objectivity come in? I think it's kind of a trite question, and I don't think it necessarily applies in a sport that's so much more weighed toward, you know, marketing characters and making money off that marketing, no matter how subtle. You know, the UFC does it in a much more sportsmanlike way, but it's really a business model for them more than the organization of a sport. But when Badr Hari knocked out Alistair Overeem, and there was jubilation at cage side, yourself, Ray Schiavello, jumping up and down, clearly taking a side in the fight, or at least maybe sharing in the enthusiasm to the point that it didn't occur to you guys to, well, maybe it did, to not do that, to not, you know, to not respond as if one person winning was more significant to you than another person winning. I know Overeem had some words for Sifo about that, and because he was a pro fighter, had you know, felt like it was disrespectful. Didn't have a problem with you doing your job. But do you feel like there have been moments that maybe you've gone too far towards cheerleading for certain fighters?
No, you see, with the Badr Hari and Overeem, what happened there in the Grand Prix, if you weren't jumping out of your seat in either shock that Overeem got stopped in under 3 minutes, or in joy that Badr Hari stopped him as he said he would in under 3 minutes, you don't have a heartbeat. I mean, if you're sitting at home watching these fights and you're not moving at all after that result, there is something wrong with you. And our jubilation was the capitulation of a whole storyline that had brewed for a long time before that Grand Prix, that any fan of K1 would know exactly why that celebration occurred the way that it did. And I think a lot of fans that had never watched K1 before and were watching K1 for the very first time could not understand why we on the commentary position would be celebrating like that after that victory. It was not a victory for Badr Hari at that time so much as it was a victory for K1. And for all the rumour circulating that K1 was dead and K1 would not be around in 2010, and that Alistair had come in saying he was a mixed martial arts fighter who was going to run through the K1 Grand Prix like a hot knife through butter, and, you know, K1 was nowhere near as strong as mixed martial arts, and here were the likes of Badr Hari and Remy Benjaski and, you know, Peter Ertz defending the honour of K1. And for Badr Hari to have the guts at the press conference to say, well, I'm going to put K1 pride on the line here, and I'm going to say I'll stop you, Alistair, inside of 3 minutes. And for him to then live up to his word and do that, after all the bad blood, not between the fighters, but between the MMA and K1, communities at that time was just, I thought, was a massive turning point, a massive moment. And us celebrating it was just an extension of the jubilation we felt. It was nothing against Alistair. If you can't tell I'm a huge Alistair Overeem fan, then you're missing something on my broadcasts. But I know that a lot of people slammed off about it, and there were quite a few so-called professional MMA reporters that slammed off about it as well. And it's like, well, sometimes I feel that, hey, if these guys would actually embrace a little more, not be as cold as they were and unemotional, they'd actually do a lot better job of reporting and broadcasting and covering fights themselves. So, no, I don't have any second thoughts. I would do it over again. If I had the chance to do it over again, I'd do exactly the same, given the same scenario. Not now, because the world of K1 and MMA has changed a lot since that Grand Prix we're talking about. But you take me back in a time machine, we hop in a DeLorean and go back to that night, 2009 Grand Prix, I'll do it the same, because it was a storyline that we were selling for television networks around the world that were watching it, and it was a storyline that worked very well. And, a storyline that helped to propel Badahari to the heights he went to, but by the same token, very much helped propel Alistair Overeem to the heights that he's taken throughout the last 18 months, which have been extraordinary.
Sure. Do you feel like sometimes there's a forced seriousness about mixed martial arts, that the hardest core fans and observers and analysts force themselves almost...
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Talk about that a little bit.
100%. A lot of people are trying to come across as, the serious... I'm not saying it's not a sport to be taken seriously. It's a dead serious sport. It's a sport we love. We want to cover effectively. But I feel sometimes that people are putting too much emphasis on just... Maybe serious is not the right word, and I'm not quite sure, Jack, what the word is that I'm looking for here. But just trying to be too much of the analytical type, trying to overanalyze the sport almost to a point of breaking it down to NBA levels or NFL levels or, professional baseball levels or some of these huge mega sports. The sport is not at that level. It's not at the level of breaking it down NFL style or NBA style. Mixed martial arts is not there yet. I see on Twitter that, MMA reporters are scooping. They're saying, I've got the scoop. And then they go and say, Joe Blow is fighting Jack Blow as the undercard prelim fight on the UFC. Come on, really? That's a big scoop? That they're fighting on an undercard prelim fight on UFC? And you're reporting this? Some fighter turns around and makes some small comment in a post-fight interview, and it's built up like it should be on the front of the freaking, New York Times. Mm-hmm. There's this line that the media is on one side being almost too serious, on the other side adopting this tabloid almost approach to covering the sport as if we're, News of the World or some trashy English tabloid paper that's following around the royal family, and every time they take a dump, they're reporting on it. There are very few credible mixed martial arts journalists out there, in my opinion, and the sport is not covered as well as it could be covered. There are those that are trying too hard to be something they are not and could not be this something they are trying to be for a newspaper or a magazine covering any other sport. But they get away with it for mixed martial arts because mixed martial arts still has a lot of very new fans who don't really know any better than they've been fed over the last 18 months, 24 months or so. People need to be more in tune with their feelings and feel the sport and not be so coldly analytical, not be so overly serious, but to feel it. All the great broadcasters of the past, even Howard Cosell, who had a very different style to mine, and I'm not comparing myself at all to Howard Cosell, but I'm just saying that he felt what he commentated. And Howard Cosell by trade was a lawyer, not a commentator. Started off being a lawyer, probably the least emotional of jobs. Mm-hmm. You go back to great writers of the past. There's guys out there who have written brilliant pieces of boxing feature writing in the past. Norman Mailer, how much did he feel the sport of boxing? He wasn't just an analytical reporter. He wasn't just a serious, straight down the line, no emotion feature writer or reporter. He felt what he wrote. He produced a great book, The Fight. Great feature writing over the years. Great writers like Les Carlyon. These guys, you can Google them. Go back to some of the old gonzo journalism stuff you'd see in the past. Read some of these features and see how these guys engrossed themselves and ingrained themselves in the sport they were covering. And they did it with such passion and feeling and enthusiasm. And there's a difference between random, crazy, over the top for the sake of over the top and crazy over the top because you've done it and you feel it with genuine passion.